Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 60 of SAMA. SAMA is a program where we invite an expert to talk about their area of expertise. This week we're very lucky to have back with us once again Masaki Miyagawa. Masaki is an expert on energy tools. He is an author, speaker and consultant based in LA. We managed to catch up with Masaki, about a month ago, over a month ago, and we had a terrific time as part of our USA Spooky 2 tour. Now, Masaki's had over 10 years' experience in this energy field, and his family's been involved in Buddhist studies for over 400 years, which is quite a long time, Masaki, 400 years. Yeah. Sorry, Masaki. So, 400 years, that's a long time. Can you take us back? How did it all start in your family line 400 years ago?
Well, my mom's side was samurai. They were kind of a low-level clan that was foot soldiers for, it was, in Japanese history, it was sort of like Italy, where there was a lot of different states, right? And then they started having a civil war until you just got to two sides, right? And then there was the Battle of Sekigahara. It's a very famous battle. And my family was on the losing side. So the Tokugawa side won, became the shogunate for the last 200 years before Japan opened to the world, right? And so my mom's side, they became priests, so kind of changed profession. But, actually 400 years is not that long, because people in the imperial household, not the emperor, but the people that work in the imperial household, like they have musicians.
Yes.
They can trace their line maybe back to 200 BC or something like that.
Oh my goodness.
So, I'm interested in all kind of topics. So when you start realizing this kind of thing, then you know that the people that run the world, they have a much different worldview than the man on the street, So my family's not that old, but coming from my background, I had sort of an understanding or a different view than most people do, I think. Yeah.
Well, I think it's to your advantage. Now, this week we're going to talk about basic meditation and visualization techniques. Now, if you can just walk us through slowly the basics of meditation. What is it and why do people do it?
Okay, so there's many different kinds of meditation, but the meditations that I do, they're focused on energy. So cleaning your energy, creating a clean circulation similar to Chinese medicine. I actually learned from Hermetic. So I learned from Western style, but because you're dealing with a framework, no matter what school you come from, there's generally themes, or they work around the same structure. Like you have, your chakra points and things like that. So I would say that some of the main things or benefits about meditation, or let's say taking time for yourself, is one, it balances your mind, gives you peace of mind, and balances your energy. So in today's world, we're very busy. Most people, they don't have time, or they don't make time for themselves, right? They're busy with work, with their relationships. Some people have children, the family to take care of. And after that, at the end of the day, they're ready to go to sleep, right? But actually, it really benefits a person to just take a half hour or an hour, ideally a day, but let's say every few days or once a week, to do some meditations, visualizations, and to take care of their energetic hygiene. which most people are not aware of. We know to bathe or take a shower, but how many people are conscious of their energetic state, right? Not many.
No,
So this is something that once you learn it, it's free because it all happens in here, right? And I think it's very valuable. So that's what I would say about meditation is it creates more balance. You could say coherence. And when we're talking about, energy, you can relate it to some of the spooky devices like the scalar remote, the new spooky scalar products you guys are working on, because the thought form or the thought wave is interconnected with this kind of bandwidth. So you can imagine if your mind state and your overall energy that you project is chaotic, what is that going to manifest in your life, right? And for your health. But if you just take a little bit of time every week to balance yourself and make yourself more ordered, clean your energy, it has a great positive effect on your entire being. That's what I would say.
And so if you have this chaotic energy, if you like, inside you, that can manifest as physical diseases. Is that how you...
Sure. We talked a little bit about it last time. That if this concept is in Chinese medicine. So if you have a blockage at a particular point, if you allow that to continue for days, weeks, months, and years, that energetic blockage can actually develop into a physical disease. So I think the smartest way to handle it is to catch it early on and balance out the energies to create a clean circulation of energy in your body before you get to the point where you say hospitalization, where you have to have a tumor taken out or something serious like that, right? So I think most traditional or holistic practice, you could say it's holistic. They take into account the physical manifestation, but it's also coming from your habits and say your energetic state, right? Because they are interconnected. But the modern Western medicine, although now that you can get your insurance to pay for acupuncture, in general, they're just looking at the surface layer or the symptoms, not the deeper roots of how you got into the hospital, right? So
right. With amongst people that do a lot of meditation, is there a lower incidence of disease?
Okay. Can you repeat that?
With people that regularly meditate, is it proven that they have a reduced incidence of disease?
I'm not aware of specific studies, but I would say that when you regularly check or you become acquainted with your own baseline or your own energetic state, you kind of know where your problem areas are. And I'm not saying don't go to the Western hospital because they're good at many things, but I think when you use a combination of intuition and you feel there's something going on with my gut, or you have a feeling of a problem area, you can go to a specialist and check it out before it becomes something serious. So
okay. And what do you do in your daily routine? We've got a few things that I'd like to talk about, like we were discussing before, and colors came up, and colors have a meaning and a purpose.
Sure.
Well, what those are.
Well, colors are connected to a bandwidth of visual light, right? We know that there's a rainbow spectrum. So when you're working with, say, crystal stones, energy tools, or just looking at your own body in your mind's eye, the color, it often gives an indication to what the properties of the energy tool may be. So I have some right here. Let's see. Here's one. Can you see this? Yeah, this is a rose quartz. So this is quartz, just like the common clear quartz. So this would be kind of neutral. The properties of quartz are as an amplifier. It also has a high energy. But rose quartz, what do you associate with pink? Usually love, right?
Yeah,
love, peace, acceptance.
Yeah.
So that would, it's kind of like a softer energy than this clear quartz.
Okay.
So you could use that, This is not in the specific, like the rainbow spectrum, but that's when it kind of gives you, there's a certain associations. Let's talk about, say, let's go along the chakras of the body. So root chakra will be red, right? So red, if you have a stone like jasper, kind of a earthy reddish tone, would be good for like the basic life energy, because it's like the root, first chakra. Second chakra, this is orange. So you might have something like a golden healer. Again, this is just quartz, but it has sort of a orangish tinge to it, right? So you can either pick stones of the color of the chakra you're going to work on, or if you're just looking through stones, say like this is amethyst, right? Again, this is quartz, but it's purple. So this would say, if you wanted to, clear a certain area or boost the point that you're working on, say like third eye, purple, amethyst purple, right? So you could work on that point. Or if you wanted to, if you want to work with the energy at that particular frequency, what's purple? Third eye? It's seeing or psychic vision. So that would be especially good for that activity. So you could kind of associate each color with a point, and it has meaning in general. Even if you've never worked with a stone, say like all blue stones in general will tend to deal with like communication, the throat chakra, blue, So it makes it kind of fun, if you go to a gem fair, you've never seen certain stones, but you could have a general idea. So some of the common stones you would work with, because you have your rainbow spectrum, right? But what about a black stone? This is black tourmaline.
Right.
You can kind of see it as a termination at the point.
Yes.
This is a very good protection stone. In fact, I would say it's the best. So what is black in esoteric? Black is, one is grounding, because the dark colors, it's like rooting you to the earth, right? And when you're grounded, like to the ground, it keeps you balanced, especially in today's world and society where people are, rushing back and forth. There's all kinds of political things in the air. It's very good to stay rooted and grounded. So great for grounding, but also protection, because black in the esoteric is like a shielding or protection color. So black stones, say like obsidian. Obsidian is just black glass, but that would tend to like reflect energy off, right? This, if you look up black tourmaline, it actually has the scientific property of turning energy into heat, right? So it's literally like a heat sink. But what they don't tell you is it's not only a heat sink for, say, electromagnetic energy, but psychic energy also. So if you're under like mental stress, or you're around like negative kind of minded people, very good stone to have. So yeah, it's just interesting that you may never have worked with a stone, but if you're in, if you have a inkling of what the colors are associated with, you can start looking into them. And right, black tourmaline, known as a protection stone, And scientifically, if you look it up, say on Wikipedia, it says it's a natural heat sink, which is basically saying the same thing, right? Let's see, another one. Say selenite. Have you ever seen this one, John?
I can't say I have. No.
It's actually inexpensive, but this is like a kind of a light white, a white light kind of stone. So if you're doing energy work on your body and you want to really clean your energy, you can use it like a wand. And actually, this one was kind of interesting. I got it off of eBay because it has like a little handle for your fingers. And you can find blades of selenite. And basically, you would just pass it over your body like this, just using the stone. Or if you know how to do energy work while you're doing your visualizations of cleaning your energy, it's like it's a tool. It's an extra boost, you know. So you don't have to use it, but naturally, this has a very high, like a white light kind of energy to clean, like your aura, right? Your energetic field. And you know, they have different shapes. So the selenite sphere, it's kind of hard to see in the light, but you can kind of see. It's almost got like that kind of cat's eye effects, right?
Yes. Hey, there's a question that's come through. Okay, from Bev Wright, all the way down from New Zealand. It's a country I know well. And she asks, "Hi Masaki, have you tried embedding the crystals with frequencies? Rose quartz loves 528."
That's something that you can do, and you can also do that with radionics, you know. So because see, quartz is like the original solid state drive, right? So and they're actually working on that now, right? Like a 3D
holographic
material that will store information. But in general, when I'm working with quartz, say if I'm working on myself or I'm working on another person, I would use, say, a quartz point like this, okay, to beam energy out of the tip. I haven't really used quartz imprinted with the frequency, but you could do that if you wanted to. So
it would be interesting to do, wouldn't it? I guess to imprint it with frequency, would you put it on top of a coil?
Yeah, I mean, you could use the spooky scalar, or you know, the kind of labs. You would put see, like the output, you would put it whatever you wanted to imprint here.
Right.
You know, any kind of radionics or say a scalar. You know, if the spooky remote was big enough, you could put something in there, but it's kind of small to do that. It's better to have something with the imprinting surface.
Okay. Now with we haven't actually announced spooky scalar yet, so we won't mention that too much.
Well, we'll cut that out.
Yeah, cut that out. But we're live in front of 13,000 Facebook friends. Yeah. And so never mind, it's like about a week away. We have just a reminder, if anyone wants to ask any questions, either through Facebook, you can post a question under Facebook. The question will be relayed to me, straight to Masaki, or you can ask it online if you've pre-registered. And Bev has passed the comment that pulsed EMF coils seem to work well for frequency imprinting. So thanks for that, Bev. Okay, so we've gone through the different types of stones. The shungite, would that be on a similar sort of basis to the black tourmaline? Regards to
I would say it's a little bit different. Shungite is interesting. I'm actually putting on a glove right now because I have a 100mm sphere just sitting right next to me here. You know, shungite, it's basically a kind of a carbon, so it marks easily. So okay. I'm finicky, so I put a glove on. Here, let's see if you can see this. I'm out of focus. Here.
You're right. That's the effect.
There we go.
That's the effect of shungite. Wow.
Yeah. Let me see if. Here we go. But you can see this is like a small cannonball right here, right?
Oh, it looks beautiful.
many people know shungite. I actually use it in all my pyramids. But the shungite's kind of interesting because it has a high energy, but it's grounding at the same time. So it's like up and down. It's good for shielding, say, electromagnetic signals.
Yes.
But for pure shield, like one, basically like black tourmaline, any incoming energy that's harmful to you, it basically will just convert it to heat. So if you want specifically shielding, you know, and not just electromagnetic, but I'll give you an example. I had frequency fatigue one time because I ran my powered pyramid longer than I recommend for most people. And I say like a week, 24/7. I felt like I had a fever, and I put black tourmaline to my head. And I think within a day, it really cut down the feeling I had, which was like, it was almost like a fever. It's a frequency fatigue. But again, this is like a heat sink, right? So any excess energy, any kind of negative energy, the black tourmaline will just drain it off. I don't know if that's the case with shungite. Shungite is an excellent kind of like a EMF protection stone for, say, like Wi-Fi and things like that. But if I was looking at a shielding stone that shields, like, say, psychic attacks, negative psychic energy, thing, I don't even know what you would call a frequency fatigue where you have sort of like a fever right here. But I said, oh, in my mind, I was thinking, well, you know, black tourmaline's, it's like a heat sink. So let's, energy heat sink. So let's try this out. And it worked. So, yeah.
They just touch briefly on power pyramids. While you're out in your little break, I was showcasing your little powered pyramid here, and it's got this cord on the top right underneath this crystal. Now, what are the frequencies that go through the cord? Is it only what gets put in through the connector here? It gets amplified?
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, you have the exclusive John White one. I have, this was like the standard, you know, gold one that I make, but yeah, it has a BNC connection. So it's driven by whatever frequency, because it's basically like an antenna.
Right.
So it's driven by whatever frequency you're running through the coil, right? But, you know, if you were to have it off and you weren't running a powered frequency through it, the pyramid would not only have energy from the material of the crystal and the resin and the metallic particles, but the coil itself, even when it's not powered, when it's not on, it's being hit by all of the radio waves, the microwaves, the Wi-Fi, and although it's not at a specific frequency, it's throwing off energy because the way the coil is, there's a cancellation effect that creates scalar waves. So,
okay. Now, we're going to talk a little bit around making energy tools and the energy tools that you've made in the past, such as the radonics booster disc as well. Have you got examples of those?
Sure. Okay. I get questions sometimes about, do you imprint? It's kind of similar to the earlier question. Have you imprinted crystals? Do you imprint the things that I make with certain energies? And I would say actually no, because in my thinking, unless it's a specific request that somebody wants, like an amethyst, right? I tend to use clear quartz, and I'll use, so like your pyramid was white, gold. They're kind of like neutral colors where you could run a frequency through it or do, say, a radionics working. I've sent out a fair number of these to the spooky users. This is the radionics booster disc. You can see it has quartz crystal on a cross here. These are just aluminum particles, and this is a gold mica. And you know, you don't have to use a disc. You could do radionics working without it. But this has, you know, it increases the scalar potential, right? So you could put it on on the input. Quartz is the amplifier. Could put this on the output. It's just a tool to use. But the reason why I don't put shungite in here, I don't put other stones, it's just the very basic materials to create the effect, is because I'm kind of creating a canvas. I'm just boosting just the scalar component without any other flavors of, say, like rose quartz or whatever, because I want the user to, if they're writing an intention or they're just imprinting, right? Imprinting like a master homeopathic, like a pill or herb or something onto a sample. This is just a boost. It doesn't have anything else to, you know, that so like this is kyanite. I don't know if we talked about this before. Also a high energy stone, right? But it's blue. So I kind of stay away from that. I just, unless it's a specific request, I'm just sticking to kind of just like boosting, providing like that high scalar energy potential for the user to take and do what they want with it. If that, does that make sense?
Kind of.
Mm-hmm.
It does.
Yeah, because you know, if I were to make this pyramid, right? But I have done this before, because you know I'm from LA, so we have some Lakers fans. So I did a gold and purple one. Basically, you run a frequency through it. It's going to be very similar to this, but you know, just the fact that it's purple is more connected to third eye, right? More connected to psychic work. You know, if somebody wanted a pyramid and their intention is really focused on manifestation and career, you know, which could be like wealth and things like that, green and yellow or green and gold, because you know, green is Venus energy, and you know, these are all archetypal things. But you know, it does have an effect when the tool you're working with specifically matches to the activity that you're going to do, right? So my tools, because I would say they're general use, usually I'm working with colors like white, gold, clear, because it's more neutral, right? So
isn't it funny, the association with colour with so much? In countries and sports teams, they all pick the colours. I wonder if there's something in the subconscious, like the purple of the Lakers and the yellow and green. I immediately thought of Australia because it's what they are. They're always yellow and green. And then you talk about
Brazil, right?
Yeah, I wonder if there is anything sort of playing, you know, in the background. Whether if someone chooses from a clean slate, well, what colours are we going to choose for the team? Well, if there was a colour that happened to be the best colour, every team would have the same colour. But they do choose specific colours for the teams which are different. Yeah, very interesting. Wealth, well, Australia is a very wealthy country. They've got terrific, you know, they've got gold mines, opals, and oil reserves, and just about everything there. Very rich in minerals. And so they are a rich country. They have more money than New Zealand. I think that's a given. And so, yeah, just wondering whether it's, yeah, with this sort of link up between the choice of colours and the sport.
It's partly subconscious, but people that know the effects of colors, they definitely know what they're doing. So, say like I said before, that black is a protection color. But, you know, in, say, astrological system, and these are just types, right? Black is connected to Saturn. You know, each planet has a color. So Earth is blue, Mars is red, Venus is green, Saturn is black. So Saturn rules banking. It rules traditional, like the church. It rules regulation, government, and it's also corporate, right? Because actually in the ancient times, the bank used to be in the Saturn temple. So that's why usually you're going to a corporate meeting, people are wearing suits that are black and white, right? It's black. Police, they tend to wear dark colors like blue or black. It's supposed to be black. So that kind of corporate, you know, nothing more classic than black. Well, it's, you know, these are themes that have been going around and around for thousands of years.
Isn't that intriguing? Now, I want to touch a little bit on everyday life. Most people are unaware of these energies that are around them.
Mm-hmm.
And there's, the material versus spiritual.
Sure.
And if there's any link between the two, what is it? Scalar quantum field, how can that explain phenomenon that we see in the world? Can we touch on that? Because that's going to be quite a difficult thing to discuss, really. It's a mindset change for people that live in a material world. If it's something they can't see and they can't touch, it doesn't exist.
Well, this is a major theme, and it's something that I think every person on the planet is learning about, say if they're a Spooky 2 user, or in general, it's coming to a head now because the pace of technology is going so fast now. So everything is accelerated, So I would say that, what Spooky 2 works with is energetics, right? Rifing, you have the scalar remote. So you're working with energetics. Now you can't see it, especially the remote healing, the quantum remote. It puzzles a lot of people. Those of us that are sensitive, I can feel as soon as the remote goes on. It's not just the click of the machine, but I can feel like a wave or pressure start to come on. It's the same thing with my pyramids, my powered pyramids. Before I send them out, I'm not just doing a muscle test, but I have to make sure that the circuit is working. So I run a frequency, and within a few seconds, I can feel the energy coming off the pyramid. But I can't see it with my naked eye, right? But you could say that energy, another word for energetics or energy, is spirit, right? So technology is great. We live in a 3D world, but it's only one half of the equation. Especially, there's a lot of reductionist thinking, which is not taking into account the so-called spiritual or the energetic. Example is, I think I had mentioned this before, but there are a lot of food products now coming out that are supposedly for convenience or to lower the cost, right? Say it could be robot chefs, which may sound ridiculous, but it's starting to come in now, right? But there is a difference. Even if the end product of the food looks the same, there's a difference if a human being, say a family member or a loving mother prepares a meal for their child, right? To many, now this may seem ridiculous, but there are many people, especially maybe tech-oriented, or they have a certain mindset because they were never introduced to the world of energy or spirit. They say this and this is the same, right? Or I gave the example a few shows ago of there's a food replacement shakes. It's a protein powder. And this gray powder supposedly has all the nutrients that this nice juicy red apple has. Well, obviously not. But what's the difference? It's the life component. Even an organic apple and one that was like GMO, they may look the same, but there's definitely an energetic difference. Now, there was ways to show this by, say, like crystallization. You can show maybe the imprint or the life energy, like that scalar component, through a crystallization of the material, But, I don't want to get too deep into it, but you can call like an extreme 3D mindset is some kind of a Luciferian or satanic mindset, because it's basically a very limited view. And when you're dealing with only one half of the equation, you start to get in trouble because, something as simple as geometry, understanding that geometric shapes, like say, like this pyramid frame, this pyramid frame, just this, and it doesn't even, the sides aren't even connected. has an energy to it. And the worst shape you can live in is a metal cube. And what do we live in today? We live in corporate square buildings, right? So it shows if someone with understanding, which I believe that it wasn't so long ago, and maybe even have been a couple hundred years ago, there were periodic drops in consciousness. But if someone, I mean, you could look at, maybe in Roman times, or the so-called classical style, people may think that we are more evolved than they are. But you look at the beauty of the carving, the marble carving of those times, and were they really that primitive? I think, at least on energetic levels, in the past, people had a far better understanding of energy. And if someone, say, from an alien was visiting and they looked around, they would say, there's something wrong with these people because they're all living in square buildings. They don't even understand basic energy, So, but there's a lot of opportunities, because that also means that this entire world needs to be rebuilt in a better way, right? So, say for architecture and those kinds of things, people can combine, beautiful structure with an energetic understanding, right?
But wouldn't a circular building take away energy from their surroundings? And this is what's happened up with the Eskimos. They started doing round houses and they got snow.
Well, I'm not an expert in architecture, but when you start scaling up, because say the pyramids that I'm making, they're too small for you to sit inside, right? Mm-hmm. But when you're dealing with structures, because shapes do create a field effect,
okay,
you have to be very conscious of what you're doing, because say like a frame like this, I've never had a problem with these. This was Nick Edwards. He passed away, so it's kind of a collector's item now. Mm-hmm. But he charged these with like a 1,000,000-volt Tesla coil, which I think really bumped up the energetic potential of these rods. But there's a lot of other frames, say, that are just made out of copper. They can actually absorb the energy of the people that are sitting in there. And if it's, the Russians found this out because they built large fiberglass pyramids in Russia in the 90s. And it became kind of a tourist attraction. But then also people that had health problems, they would go inside. But the energy of these people would become like stuck or imprinted, right? Scalar energy is the information field, and it has a property of imprinting on things. So their energy of these sick people got imprinted into the pyramid. Now it can be cleared, but if you're not aware of that, then some of these structures could become accumulators of negative energy.
Wow.
So you have to be conscious of clearing rituals, or placing material, high energy material like a quartz, selenite, or like the Egyptians, they use granite, right, which has a lot of quartz in it in their pyramids. So it's just something that I think that the time now and going into the future, people are starting to look at these things again, or become conscious of them.
Right. You must have a large box just beside you with all your goodies. I had a question from Bev Wright again, and she asks, have you used Bayeshar free energy space-time antennae as part of your radionics or within the pyramid? The Bayeshar.
Usually I just use the booster disc. I use like quartz. Quartz is great because it's relatively cheap, and it doesn't matter where you get it from. People like the so-called Lemurian quartz from Brazil, but quartz is quartz. So if you find a piece and you like it, that's great. And another one is like a tensor ring. It's actually a prototype I have. This one's like, it's collapsible. So people could take it on travel. People could take it on travel, but then it folds out, and then you could put a quartz, or this is a golden healer quartz to boost it, right? But you could put this on top of your radionics board, or, even if you have a written intention, no board, it'll still work because, it's, that would be called psionics because it's not powered if you're just writing an intention and using this tool. But if it has a current running through the equipment, that's radionics.
Okay.
I haven't worked with what she was asking about, but I showed you some of the tools that I do use.
Okay. And Carmela Walker, she's another regular on SAMA here. She asks, do you use wood? Because Russians use wood in a lot of their equipment. Do you use wood with your equipment?
I don't use wood, but I do use incense, like Palo Santo.
Oh, okay.
So, because, that's another thing. Aromatherapy and like incense changes the vibration. Some people use sage, but I really like Palo Santo. So,
Carmela says that Russians make pyramids out of wood, which is good. And wood is a living item too, so it would have an energy in itself, I guess. So that would have benefit.
Well, this is anecdotal, but I noticed that some of the ancient Nordic and traditional Russian construction, they had a kind of a jointless architecture, and we have that in Japan also. And it's quite amazing because it's pretty hot. It's hot in here in LA. It's hot in Nanjing today. Some of these ancient structures, although they're just made out of wood, the hottest day of the summer, you go inside and it's cold. It's cool. And I don't know, you have to experience it to know what I'm talking about. But it's been a long time since I've been to Japan, but I went into some of the old farmhouses and you could just feel like the weight, like the density of the wood. And outside it's hot, and you go inside and it's cool. So that's pretty interesting. Yeah.
And what would the roofs be made from? Are they timber as well? The roofing?
Yeah, sometimes it's thatched, but it's basically all wood. And it has to be replaced periodically.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Wow. That's amazing. Okay, let's see if you've covered all the things we were supposed to be covering. The spiritual phenomenon. Scalar quantum field explains many paranormal and spiritual phenomenon. The spiritual phenomenon. What sort of phenomenon are you talking about, or when you do talk about that?
Well, number one is just understanding that there's another bandwidth outside of the regular electromagnetic, the regular EMF that exists that we were never told about, which is the so-called, Tesla 0 point. He called it the standing wave. It's called, Wilhelm Reich's orgone, also called, scalar field, scalar wave. Russian called torsion field because it's kind of a spinning energy. It's all the same thing, but because it's an information field, it can explain things like psychic phenomena, right? So you can, especially if you have a close attachment to people, like say a loved one, family members. We've all heard stories about like, well, how do you know? You have, mother has a feeling something's wrong with my son. Well, how does she know? Because they're attached. The human being is a receiver and transmitter of the scalar energy, so that explains that it actually does exist, that kind of sixth sense, the intuition and remote healing. The scalar wave has no distance dimension. So you can work on somebody like a hands-on healing in front of you, but you can, with your intention, this is almost like so-called radionics, right? As long as you have a target and you're working on that person, the energy can be sent. It's very similar to the scalar remote, right? Also, there's a thing called psychometry. So say Here, let me grab something here. Yeah, say look, this crystal could be a pair of eyeglasses, but any object was owned by somebody. And a so-called intuitive or psychic person, they can put their hand on it and they can tell you where it was, who owned it, where it's been. How? Well, it's not magic because we know the scalar energy imprints. So everything is, no matter what it is constantly recording everything around it. And if you're sensitive enough or you've developed the skill, you can do so-called psychic reading. I actually think, because, I do readings, I use numerology, which is a more understandable technical way of, giving a reading. Mm. But I also use intuitive technique. And when you start to do meditation, looking at your own energy, it is only one step removed. Because when you start looking at your own energy, then you can start looking at other people's energy, right? Because it's just a difference of the perspective. You can start picking up what's going on with them. Mm. And then you take that one step removed, there's no person in front of you, and you're just looking at situations. That then you're basically doing psychic reading, And so I've had situations where I don't know exactly what happened, but I look at the two people and I say, this guy's energy it's almost like black, and this other guy, he looks normal, or it's brighter in my mind's eye. So I said, I don't know exactly what happened, but I would tend to believe the person whose energy is higher, So, and when you start to do readings, it really sharpens your ability to pick up what's going on, because you have to be accurate, basically, right? Mm. I did a lot of free readings early on because I'm pretty finicky. You might be able to tell from my pyramids. So I really want the client to say, you were right. Even I'll sometimes ask, so what do you think at the end? They say, you were basically right. So when you start to do readings for other people, you get a sense of like how accurate you are, and this is, may seem like we're kind of going off into a side channel, but this is all about, like energetics, the so-called scalar energy. It's just kind of another aspect that's not directly related to healing.
I think it's a subject that science is a little bit uncomfortable about because it can't be explained through science as it's known today. And Carmela Walker, she's given the comment how string theorists associate psychic channeling to string theory. It's the closest they can come to understanding.
Well, the very top scientists, they know all about this. Because the scientist is basically the modern priest. So the modern priest class. So, it's a pyramid structure. The ones at the top, they know what we're talking about, It's just that I think I talked about this before, that they kind of emphasize some things and de-emphasize others, or totally hit it, because they know basically you're dealing with two halves of a whole, right? So if you can drop out or say this doesn't exist, and you only put up the 3D stuff, the physical, then you're keeping the magic in your pocket, and you're only giving the public half of the equation, right? So
that's worth thinking about. I know that with many things medical, they tend to oversimplify things, often to the detriment of the person. Like, for example, they're teaching us LDL is bad cholesterol and HDL is good cholesterol. So it's the good guys and the bad guys, like you see on TV, nice and simple. But it's not actually the case. There's definite grey area. And even the discussion where all cholesterol is bad or all fats are bad, well, both are necessary for life. Your brain is basically cholesterol. So if
right.
You're low in cholesterol, you're low in brain.
well, we kind of talked about it earlier, but this is one thing I'm seeing a lot because I'm in LA, or let's say California, or the west coast of the US.
Yeah.
A lot of the trends start here, and they don't just spread to the rest of America, but they go to the rest of the world, right? So there's a big vegan or vegetarian movement, which I don't have a problem with, but archetypally, the age that we're going into, the so-called Aquarian age, has to do with what? it has to do with Aquarius is the air sign. So it has to do with like Wi-Fi. Has to do with spooky, the energetics, right? You don't necessarily see the energy. But it's also like mind, right? Air sign, thinking. So there's a lot of deception happening. So you could get a lot of benefit from either not eating meat or eating a less meat diet, right? But there's a lot of manipulation happening with, I won't name the names, but there's some very big corporations people would be very familiar with that are putting a lot of money into these meat substitutes. And there's some hamburger patties. I think I told you in LA, they're so-called vegetarian hamburger patties. But then I find out, and I had one, it was actually pretty good until I find out it's made from some kind of GMO yeast. You know, if people remember that 70s film with Charlton Heston, Soylent Green, a lot of people are starting to move further and further away from nature into artificiality. Well, and Aquarius is about artificial because it has to do with like alien themes and space, and you know, it's kind of futurism. But there's always two sides to it. It's not good or bad. The good part would be having a mastery of frequency, resonance, and energy. You could heal things that nobody could heal before, right? Expanding your mind and those kinds of things. But the lower aspect would be, you know, falling into like a computerized, artificial intelligence, robotic world, you know? So technology is just a tool, but at some point you have to say, like, you know, I'll say this. In the traditional stories or the legends, right? No one has been able to recreate the spark of life, which is the human being or your loving pet animal. Yet we are at the point where people are saying, if we can upload my consciousness to machine, that's the next level. Or don't worry if your favorite pet died, because we can make an android dog and it'll be better than your loving organic dog. That seems totally ridiculous, but we are very much on that track. But all it is and we're starting to understand this now, because the scalar, the so-called like the chi, this field that we never knew about before, right? It's starting to teach us what all the spiritual traditions said. We are all one. We are all connected, right? If you're in a 3D mechanistic reductionist mindset, there's nothing to prevent me or no blowback from me knocking you on the head and taking the money, your wallet, and taking the money out of your pocket, because there's no God, there's no energetic so-called spiritual repercussion. But if you understand all things are connected at a higher level, we're all made from the same energy, then you can understand karmic blowback, because at some point the wave reflects back on itself, you know?
You'd be disappointed if you looked in my pocket.
Yeah.
I won't go into that. Yeah, no, you're right, actually. We're all part of one. What is life? What is living? Because the difference between someone or something living and not living is not really physical necessarily. If someone's had a blow in the head, it may make some tissue damage, but you can apply greater damage to your arm and still be alive. And so there's definitely deeper things which we do not understand. And this is the sort of subjects that scientists do not like to discuss.
I would say if people are kind of interested, you know, I am a Scorpio, so I learned a lot from looking at the darker things that are going on. But it's a framework. So if you can understand things from the light and the dark, but it's a framework. And through many years of doing self-healing, working with energy tools, I learned a lot. You know, and I would say that one of the major things that I think, because there is kind of like an opening up, people are, you know, getting into things like spooky too, but there's also like a exposing of a lot of problems that have been going on for a long time. I would say that the archetype of the Saturn energy. That's something, look into Saturn. That's a very interesting topic. And again, there's like a yin and a yang, right? So it's actually, there's no good or bad, but if the banking system relates to Saturn and a lot of the oppressive things relate to Saturn, and there are people in this world that solely worship that, that could be a problem. And it's been going on for a long time. So I would say if you're interested in, you know, what's really been going on in the world, the Saturn archetype, that has a lot to do with it. And I think a lot of people out there, they don't even know that they're connected to it. But if you've ever worn Nike shoes, do you know what that little swoosh on their Nike logo is? It's the ring of Saturn.
Oh, is it? I never knew that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Was it you that told me about brand names of clothing? There's a reason why they put the tag on the back of your clothing and have it pressing up against your neck. Is that you?
I didn't say that, but that's interesting because, you know, the back of the neck is entry point. So that's a sensitive point. So it could have some occult meaning. But even like, you know, because we have some of the Spooky 2 users that are doing radionics, you know. So basically any kind of symbol is a radionic symbol because it has a intention, has an energy on it. So you kind of have to wonder what some of the corporate logos or like say even the barcode on products are. And you don't have to be afraid of it, you know, just like one little thing is, it's not going to kill you. But in general, everything is based on symbols. So if you increase your symbol literacy, then you start to become more confident in what you want to do. And like I said, I think one of the most important things, because we started talking about meditation, right? We have a lot of energies such as Wi-Fi and so forth that are encroaching on your space. So when you clean your energy, you start to take your space back. This is being sovereign. So it may seem like a small thing, but one by one, if people do this, and especially a lot of the people that are using Spooky, disease is a teacher. It's dis-ease. It's teaching you that something is out of balance in your life. And a lot of these people, even though they may have recovered or they may be, you know, dealing with health problems now, these are very powerful people. Sometimes the illness is the greatest teacher. And one by one, if we're taking our power back, this is what I think his name was Kongzi. It's called Confucius, right? The idea is, well, how do you create the perfect world? It's one by one. So you order yourself, and then the family is harmonious. And then say your village or the neighborhood, your street becomes harmonious. And then the cities, and then the province, and then the country or the world, you know? Which when I was younger, I was kind of puzzled, like, does that really work? But I could see now, because there's a lot of people that try to externalize everything, but actually the internal is just as important, because some of the people that are yelling the loudest politically, a lot of activists, I would say, which, you know, there's a lot of important issues in this world, but they're externalizing their internal conflict. When we balance ourselves inside, then it naturally will manifest outside. So it's, you know, I'm not saying one over the other, but especially Westerners, we're very external. It's a very yang culture, right? It's like the sun, but there's also the moon, you know, the other side. And the moon is like the feminine, sacred feminine. It's the inside. So again, you could break this down. You know, Chinese culture, I don't know how they came up with this. Very simple, yin and yang, the light and the dark. It's just a balance, 50-50, you know? Everything balanced. If you break everything down to balance, if you're balanced, you're going to be okay.
Bev has asked a question. She wants to, let's see, I don't know where the question went. Oh, there we go. We've had a few questions since then. She wanted you to explain the energy tools you've worked with. Now, you've touched on a few, like your pyramids, your tensor rings, and let's see, what else have you done? If you just wanted to just quickly touch on what else you do, you've got your radionics machine. What else do you work with?
I basically work with the tools you've talked about, but I'll tell you my routine.
Yes.
Especially now with the sample digitizer. Every day I'm kind of like running the biofeedback scans. I have, I think, 6 remotes going. I'm getting my vitamins, my detox. I'm doing that. Periodically, it's not every night, but periodically I'll run powered pyramid. And there's certain frequencies like Schumann resonance that I like to use, 432. Oh, I should mention this because, if people have Spooky 2, now I have my powered pyramid for several uses, right? One would be radionics because it's boosting that. 2 would be for like frequency toning. Now, if you have the remote, you're putting like, say, the nail sample in there. You could do that too. And it's going directly to you, right? Because the quantum entanglement of the DNA. But the powered pyramid, it also puts out kind of like a field in a whole room. So you're toning the whole room, So you could use my pyramid for yourself, or there's some, like yoga groups that would use my pyramid. But, if you don't have my pyramid, you could also, if you have a spooky remote, you could put the nail in there and then say run a Schumann resonance or something that you connect with for meditation, and then do your meditation while running the spooky. That's came to mind. So that's basically what I do. I have a lot of energy tools around me now, so it seems like the world's kind of going crazy, but I try to keep, like I said, in my space, it's pretty calm. Right. I think that there is an increase in a lot of the chaos because we're in a time of change. It could be like 1,000-year turn. There's multiple cycles overlapping, and the world may seem like, some people may even say it's like apocalypse. It's like the end times. But the reason why is because we are like in a major humanity shift right now. So there's turbulence, when you're like turning the ship is like major turbulence.
Yeah.
So that's why it's even more important to use things like spooky for balancing your health, using energy tools to balance the energy in the space around you, and doing your personal meditations to balance your mind. Because otherwise, you're going to be like the other people running crazy in the street, right? So it's just a matter of, experimenting, try things out. It can be fun. A lot of these tools are fun to work with.
In closing this, Masaki, what one piece of advice would you give to someone who is very suspicious of what we're talking about and wants to see some sort of positive proof that there is some energies and crystals and colors and meditation?
I would say I appreciate people that are skeptical more than people that just accept anything that anybody says, because I think we should combine both, an understanding of these so-called invisible energies, but then proving them, like we did the muscle test last time.
Yeah, that was really interesting. There's no denying that was definitely real science and something there.
So there's also ways, especially in water, that I may do this soon. I never felt the need to prove, because I know I'm working with these tools all the time and I'm very busy. But you can say with a pyramid, or I might do like a coil and put it under a glass of water and run a frequency, because the crystallization will be different. Because a lot of these things, as far as energetically, they're invisible to the naked eye. But once you flash freeze a sample that has been imprinted with scalar energy, or you're using, basically, I'm working with scalar coils, the Rodin coil, the vortex coil. When you freeze a water sample, you'll see the crystallization is different. So it can be proven, but I think that, we're in the time where this is new to a lot of people. So, why not be skeptical? Because that just means that you're really hands-on, going to prove to yourself what works and doesn't work. And, I think that's a great thing. So I think self-knowledge is the key.
Okay. So I guess the one thing could be to freeze water, but they need a microscope to see the effect.
Well, no, actually, if you have a powerful enough piece of orgonite or orgone pyramid or a scalar coil, you don't need a microscope, because you'll see like a vortex going through the water. It's big. It's big enough to see with the naked eye.
Isn't that amazing? Okay, so that'll be the thing to do then. To prove the one thing to prove that there is actually a science there. This hasn't been explained by science yet.
Right. Or the plant growth experiment. That's actually preset in the Spooky.
Yes.
So you could, I actually have pictures up on the forum. I took some tomato seeds. I used one batch of seeds. Half was a control, half were imprinted. Just using this, and I think you could use the remote too. But it's basically the growth frequencies in the Spooky presets. And I put the pictures up after 5 weeks. The seeds that were treated, and that was only one time for 45 minutes before planting. The difference was like this. It was like 4 times more growth. So, that's only with the, 2 pots of plants, but I guess that placebo is pretty strong, huh?
Placebo. And of course you can structure the water that you water the plants with as well. And so you can give them continuous doses of this growth frequencies. And as you say, it's hard this placebo effect with tomatoes. You can't tell them are out while they're in an earshot that, hey, buddy, you've been given some frequencies to make you grow faster. Amazing stuff. Well, Masaki, thank you once again for coming on our SAMA and teaching us things that we did not know, energy devices, the use of energy devices, practical use that people can use in their everyday lives. It's really an awareness, I guess, Masaki, isn't it? An awareness that there's a lot out there. And you can never stop learning.
Can I say 2 things that, I do meditation classes, but, there's specific steps, but in general, intention alone will shift a person. There's 2 things that are very helpful. One, like I said, is grounding. If people can imagine grounding themselves to Mother Earth, like roots or a rope, and just connect to the earth, that really helps balance you. Then 2, gold light. Gold is a very high frequency. Yes. So if you can imagine this gold light, coming from universal source and beaming down and pushing out all the heavy things, any old energy, stuck energy, just imagine it coming down like a column of light and pushing it out. Just those 2 things. And I didn't go through all the steps. It can make a major difference. And the more vivid that you can visualize it in your mind, like you can go look on pictures online of like gold or sparkly gold, and then you imagine that coming down over your body. Very energizing. Yeah.
Amazing. And it's riveting. Thank you, Masaki, for spending your time. Masaki came on the show on short notice. Your other expert who was allocated for this time, he got hit with a heat wave. Pretty much what we're being hit with right now, but probably to a greater extent, where I guess the tires started melting on the roads, and he truly could not make it to the SAMA. So, Masaki, it was short notice. Thank you so much for coming onto our show. It's been wonderful having you. Goodbye.
Yeah, thanks.